And it starts with that AFC East clash with the Jets and the Patriots.
Yeah, wow. That was, for a game that featured a lot of punts, it was a fun game to watch because both teams were trying to avoid losing with their quarterback. And in fairness, I was saying this to a friend of mine this morning. I gave Bill A.D. the Jets in 3.5. I like the Jets to get – if it would have been 3, I think I would have taken the Patriots. But I thought the hook was going to be in play. But when you watch the game, the Patriots, were in control of the game, partly because of Zach Wilson. Now, the 6 sacks killed them. They had too many negative plays, too many penalties, and then they missed 2 field goals, or else I think this game probably would have been even a bigger rout than the last time they played them. I mean, they dominated the game partly because of Zach Wilson. But to me, what I'd like to talk about is situational football with you, Femi. And I think it's so sad that we as consumers of the game, we don't hear this on our broadcast. Because football is truly chess on grass. And every move dictates another move. So let's go to this game. Belichick calls timeout with 26 seconds left to go. All right? He calls his second timeout. Now, do you think he's calling a timeout because he thinks he's going to get the ball in field goal range with time to go in the game? Do you think he's going to do that with 26 seconds to go? The Jets called timeout on 2nd and 2. He didn't because he was like, okay, I'm not letting this. But when it got to 3rd and 1 and they lost 2 yards, he wanted to force a punt. He wanted to force a punt. This is Parcellsian. This goes back to Bill. Make the other team punt. Make them execute. Okay, so he calls timeout. Salah is sitting over there on the sideline wondering about how bad his quarterback was playing, I'm sure. Wondering about, I can't believe this guy, but we'll get this to overtime. Of course, naturally, he sends his punt team out on the field. They double the gunners. Once you see that the gunners are doubled, you know Belichick's got a return set up. So the only way you can lose the game or not get the game to overtime is if you let them return it for a touchdown or you let them return it where they can get it in field goal range. And so, naturally, what would you do? What would Bill Parcells do? What would any coach who understands situational football do? He would have punted the ball out of bounds. Told his punter, I don't give a fuck what you do, punt it out of bounds. Because the only way we lose the game is if they return it. If you punt it out of bounds, we can't lose the game. We'll get the game to overtime. Naturally, they punt it straight down the middle like a fucking fly ball at center field in the World Series, and they take it to the thing. And everybody blames Zach Wilson, which he deserves to be blamed. Salah will never get any heat for that call. I was texting a friend, and he was saying, that wasn't why they lost the game. Yes, that's why they lost the game. Now, there's 1,000 other reasons why they lost, but that was something he could control. When Belichick called timeout, if I were doing the broadcast, I'd be saying, okay, got to punt the ball out of bounds here. But, of course, naturally, I don't know if they said it. I doubt it because I wasn't listening. I just watched it.
Yeah, I wasn't listening either. I had it on with the red zone on the other screen there. But to me, I almost thought, was this a mistake by the punter? Because we've seen that in the past, and the conditions were a little windy as well. So I'm not sure if he tried to punt it out of bounds, and then maybe the wind
hit it
just brought
straight down the middle.
But,
Nobody told that kid to punt that ball out of bounds. There's no chance. That thing was like a lazy fly ball in July that was carrying, but it knew it wasn't going to get out of the park. Like it was straight down the middle, and they set up a right return to the defensive left, to the Jets left. The kid didn't really have to make anybody miss. I mean, it was like a little bit like we played back in 1992. I think it was 92, right? So, no, it was 93. We're playing Pittsburgh on the afternoon game in October. This is when we had 2 bye weeks. And we had a bye going into the next week. And Testaverde's playing quarterback. We had bench Kosar, and we're playing pretty good. And we got a good defense, and we're playing pretty good. We run in the Steelers. The Steelers knock out Testaverde, separate his shoulder earlier in the game, and we got to put Kosar back in the game, who can't really make a throw. Like he's got nothing left in it. He's got nothing going. And so the Steelers come back in the game. Metcalf takes a punt early in the game for a touchdown. Okay? I wrote about this in Gridiron Genius in the special teams chapter. So then Pittsburgh gets the ball. We stop them. They're trying to run the game out. We stop them. They punt the ball down the middle of the field, and Metcalf takes it straight down the sideline. You can see your boy Louis Riddick running right next to him as they go into the end zone. I mean, it's straight down the field. We win the game. Like, you can't do that. You can't do that. Like, that's part of the game that fans don't understand that they should be educated on. Like, this is unbelievable. Like, and it happens every week. Like, strategy. Stop telling me about cover three. You know what drives me crazy is when the announcers start going into this player's saying this to himself. Like, how do you know that? Like, just talk about the strategy of the game. Like, that was an important play, Femi.
It was the play that decided the game there. Marcus Jones, 84-yard punt return with 5 seconds left after he went ahead and crossed Patriots there. I know a lot of people were focused more so on the maybe block in the back that we saw.
It was a block in the back.
And it looked like it was. Yeah, I mean, his head was
He had
behind.
no reason to block the guy either. He had no reason to block him.
He wasn't going to catch him.
It was a dumb play. Yeah. But they would have moved the ball back 10 yards from that spot. It probably would have been a 40-yard field goal, right? I mean, and Folk missed 2 of them earlier in the game. Uh-huh. You know, he was, one hit the crossbar and one was shanked to the left. So there's no guarantee he was going to make it. I mean, that wind was howling in that game. But, the real story that comes out of that game won't be that Salai punted it down the middle of the field, right? He won't take accountability for that. The real story is how shitty Jack Wilson is. Like, my question to you is, as a quarterback guru, how would you proceed? Like, where are you going with this guy?
Well, I don't know what you do here with this team because I tweeted it out earlier watching that game, and I was like, hey, if you're Robert Saleh, how do you look the other guys in the face and say that this is our quarterback? Because it was absolutely atrocious. And I know the politics side of it thing is that he's a first-round pick, so you can't really bench him. But, man, I think you got to try
why
to
can't
find –
you?
I mean,
why can't you bench him?
But they're not – but is the owner going to let you bench him with all that's invested into Zach Wilson?
If you're interested in winning, you got to bench him. Like, at some point – look, We've seen this now, right? We've seen him play really shitty. Against Pittsburgh, he played good in the third, fourth quarter. He brought him back. Against Miami, he played good in the fourth quarter. But every time they've let him play in the game, whether it's the Patriot first game, I mean, Femi, he tried to throw 3 interceptions yesterday. Yeah. I mean, McCourty dropped one right in his hands.
I thought it was atrocious.
At the end of the game before the punt, Jonathan Jones has got an interception over by the Patriot bench that he doesn't bring in. I mean, that's going to be the game right there.
And to put into context how bad this Jets offense was, I mean, they had more punts in the game than completions. They had 10 punts, 9 completions. Wilson was 9 of 22 for 77 yards. You mentioned all the interceptable passes, 0 points in the second half, 2 yards, 2 net yards in the second half, 7 drives, 7 punts, minus 1.9 net yards per attempt there for Zach Wilson. And at this point, I feel like this Jets staff, they know what they have. And you mentioned them not wanting to let him participate, and we saw that all day yesterday, that the game plan was, how do we win the game without our quarterback actually being involved in the game? And unfortunately, they'll go ahead and lose it there. So if you were the GM, Michael, would you pull the trigger on this? Would you bench Zach Wilson for either Mike White or Joe Flacco?
I think you got to play Mike White. I don't think there's any reason not to. I mean, you're just coming off a game where you had 6 first downs in the game. Okay, Denzel Mims dropped the ball. That was probably one other first down. So you had 7. Like, tell me where they played well. You're 3 for 14 on third down, another LaFleur classic. I mean, this time it's Mike, not Matt. They got 103 in total yards. You can't run the ball. Look, when they lost Hall, they lost all their running. They can't. Their offensive line isn't good. Right? So they can't run the ball, and then he can't throw completions. I mean, the Patriots' defense is good. This isn't like, oh, my God, they're the 64 Packers or the 85 Bears. I mean, seriously, they're good, but they're not, elite. And yet, I mean, if the Patriots had 8 penalties in the game, which killed them, and they had 6 sacks, I mean, I handicapped the game for it to be a 3.5-point game. I thought it would be played the way it was. I was wrong on the handicap because the Patriots – when you peel it back, they actually moved the ball better than you thought. They ran the ball effectively. They controlled the ball for 35. Think about this. They controlled the ball for 35 minutes in the game and were 4 of 15 on third down.
Wow.
I mean, so, that's pretty impressive that you can do that. They only had 59 plays in the game and controlled it for 35 minutes. They played, and Mac Jones only threw 4. But he got sacked 7 times or 6 times in the game. You can't do that. And they couldn't really – when they got to the red zone, they couldn't get a rhythm going down there. So they actually looked better at times running the ball. But their offensive line continues to be bad. They lose David Andrews in the game. They were rotating between Isaiah Wynn and Trent Brown at left tackle. They had holding calls, negative. Once they got behind the down and distance, it was over. But thank God, in 2 games they played, Zach Wilson's been the difference in both games.
Michael, I want to read off some post-game quotes from Zach Wilson in this game because I thought that this was even as bad as he was on the field, he was even worse after the game. and he was asked if that you thought that you let the defense down. The question was, do you feel like you let the defense down at all? Wilson said no. He then later added, quote, I think you have to take into account it's windy as hell out there too, guys. These are excuses because we saw Mac Jones out there in the windy conditions, and Mac Jones didn't light the world on fire either with some of the sacks that he took in that game. He wasn't very good, but he did what was required to at least keep his team in the game there. What's up with Wilson? I mean, there seems like there's a lack of accountability for a player that hasn't done anything in the NFL.
Well, I mean, he's kind of like nonchalant about it. He's been immature since he's gotten there, right? And to me, there's no attention to detail in his play. I mean, it was windy, but that's not an excuse. I mean, you're playing quarterback for the New York Jets, and November and December, it's going to be windy in the Meadowlands. I'm going to break that to you. You also grew up in Utah where it's cold weather, and I'm sure they've got wind in Utah too, so you should be used to it. There's no excuse. I mean, weather is a factor of the game. And, look, I think at the end of the day, my handicap was wrong. I think the Patriots were the better team, and they played better. Because the Jets couldn't get anything going, they could get no continuity with their offense. They couldn't run the football. They had 23 rushing attempts for 59 yards. So you can't run the ball. And then every time you went back to pass with him, you're holding your breath. I mean, he had 9 completions in 22 attempts. I thought that they would try to do a lot of short throws for him to keep him from messing up the game, and he still was going to mess up the game. Like, at some point, you're the leader of the team. You got to take accountability.
Head coach Robert Saleh, after the game, was asked about the second half offensive performance there. He said, quote, it was dog shit. And then later on, he was asked, was there any point where you thought you sensed some offensive spark that something might get going? Saleh said, in the second half, the reporter then responded, at any time. He said, at any point, no. And then also this from Garrett Wilson I thought was interesting. He said after the game, this bleep is not okay. Straight up, it is not okay. How many total yards did we have? 103? That is not going to fly. We got the dudes. It's time to be consistent. It's time to win the games that we should win. And when you watch that game, the Jets should win. The Jets have better players than the New England Patriots, but it keeps going back to Zach Wilson. And I thought was a really interesting column from Connor Hughes over at SNY. He's their Jets and Giants reporter over there. He put this tweet out, and it was a column that he wrote after the game. And it said, sources inside the Jets' losing locker room told SNY that Zach Wilson was walking around after the game, quote, like he isn't the problem. It rubbed more than a few the wrong way, frustrating several others. Can this become a problem in the locker room if this continues with Zach Wilson playing the way he's playing?
It's already a problem. I mean, you can see it. See Garrett Wilson's comments. Look at Salai's comments. I mean, so what's Salai going to do? So what's your alternatives here? You're going to fire McDaniels? I mean, I read a column this week where he's up for a head coaching job. I mean, somebody put a column, they sent it to me. I don't know who wrote it, but there's all these coaches are up for head coaching jobs. McDaniel's one of them. I mean, seriously? Like that somebody's going to hire Mike McDaniel to be a head coach? Like, okay. All right, now you've just revealed all your sources in the column, okay, because this is who you're talking to, right? There's no chance of that. So you're either going to fire him or you're going to fire the quarterback. So he's just going to keep getting guys fired. But I think it's clearly no accountability. I mean, he has no accountability. He doesn't think he's the problem. How do you solve it? How do you solve any problem if you don't acknowledge it? What's the first thing they tell you in Alcoholics Anonymous is you've got to acknowledge you've got a problem. Right? And then now we are on the road to recovery. If you don't acknowledge it, we'll never get to recovery. This kid's never acknowledged. It's all just okay. And I don't think, like let's take Taylor Heineke. The team gravitates to him. They like him. They feel good about him, right? You could see the Jets don't feel good. Like there's no camaraderie with Zach Wilson. Like he's not part of who they are. Like he doesn't endear himself to the team. Like I would guess, this is just a guess, I don't know this, but I would guess at the meal hall, he probably doesn't hang out with the offensive lineman.
Which it's a shame because this is a Super Bowl caliber defense that they have out there. And
I don't think you say that. I don't see that.
You don't see that on that front four, Michael?
Super Bowl caliber?
The defense. Look, I'm talking about the defense. That front four was after Mac Jones all day long.
I mean, Mac Jones threw 4 incomplete passes. He threw the ball. I mean, if they would have protected better, and a couple of those, he held the ball. Like Mac Jones doesn't want to turn the ball over. Like, let's not confuse the Patriots offense for the 99 Rams here now. Like they moved the ball. They ran the ball. I mean, what championship level defense can you run the ball on? I mean, seriously, what championship level defense does it make you play one-dimensional? You can run the ball in the Jets. There's runs to get in the game. I mean, Damian Harris had some. Stevenson had some. I mean, I think they're good. Don't get me wrong, Femi. I think they're a good defense. Do I think they're elite? No. Do I think they're the 49ers? No, not yet. They're not there yet. But, I mean, look, the reality of it is the Patriots had every opportunity to score when they got down the red zone. They made mistakes. I mean, he turns the ball. So they get the holding call. They have, I think it was, he scrambles for 4th and goal from the 6th. And they get the holding call, so they back it back up, and now it's 3rd and 12. And then he takes another sack, and then they miss the field goal. Like, they as much as, like, you can't take a sack there.
Yeah.
I mean, the Patriots did enough to win the game. I thought their offense actually was better in this game than it was in the last time they played them. You would admit that?
No, I would admit that too. Yeah, playing at home and I mean, they ran the ball effectively, but still, the Jets' defense, at least, I feel bad for those guys only allowing 3 points, and then you lose the game there in a pretty critical game for this AFC playoff picture and that AFC East division. Thanks for watching the GM Shuffle with Michael Lombardi, and for more videos like this, make sure to subscribe to VSiN Live and the GM Shuffle podcast with Michael Lombardi, presented by DraftKings and VSiN, wherever you get your podcasts.